down, start looking down.
Mama, look at it coming.
Haley,
Haley,
coming.
look down.
Look down.
Look down.
Ready?
Look down.
Oh, 559.
Oh,
559. Thank you.
Hello everyone. As you may have already known, I gave birth a month ago to my little baby boy, Jude Joshua Lesko. I wanted to share with you my birth story, our birth story, and how it all went down, what happened, and so on and so forth. As you can hear, he's kind of waking up, so I'm gonna go grab him. I'm a mama. This is my baby boy, Jude, and we're so happy to have him. It's crazy that he's not in me anymore. That's just so weird to think about. Anyways, I wanted to share the birth story with you because I know when I was pregnant, even before that, even before I was married, I really benefited from watching videos like this, stories of women sharing their birth story and what to expect. You know, preparing yourself for it. Now, obviously, birth is crazy, and there are parts that, you know, you can prepare yourself for it, but there are parts that you can't. You do not know how your specific birth is going to go down. You have, each baby is different, each mother is different, each body's different, so the scenarios, the different circumstances will play out differently. At least for me, the more knowledge I had, the less fear I had. So, no, that wasn't with, obviously you can't know everything about birth, but there are things that you can know about birth, a part of God's design. And with the things that you can't know or predict about birth, you just have to trust Him and just rest in the Lord. Obviously, if you're Christian, and if you're not, hopefully you are open to that. So anyways, my pregnancy was pretty uneventful, thankfully. Had a very easy first trimester. In the second trimester, things got even better. And then the third trimester was great. I loved being pregnant. It was great. It was awesome. Now, not everyone has that experience. I'm not sure if I'm going to have that experience every single time, but I'm just thankful for the journey I had. So anyways, cut to the birth story, and just a little discretion to my viewers right now. It's going to be a little TMI. It's a birth story. So if you're uncomfortable with talking about blood and everything else that goes along with birth, then, just a warning there. But it is a birth story. So anyways, my pregnancy was pretty uneventful. Not boring, but it was pretty chill up until the last weeks. So I think I was 36 weeks and I went in for my 36-week appointment. And so the whole time I was pregnant, I was only meeting with my nurse practitioner, not the OBGYN. We had met with our doctor the first prenatal appointment. And then after that, she was on maternity leave, so we hadn't seen her for a while. So we were meeting with her nurse practitioner. And so I went in for my appointment, and my blood pressure was high. And they took it again. It was high again. And then they took it after the appointment. It was still high. I don't remember how high it was actually, but it was high. It was enough to cause, concern to them. Not like rush me to labor and delivery, but at least just kind of keep an eye on me. And so she had to sit down with me and be like, your blood pressure was high. I don't think she told me I had gestational hypertension. Nobody actually diagnosed me. Nobody told me you have gestational hypertension. I think it was just kind of like one of those things where it's like, okay, no doubt, Haley, you have hypertension, whatever. I don't know. But she gave kind of a spiel on why you shouldn't have high blood pressure, especially during pregnancy, the whole thing, with preeclampsia. And so she wanted me to get labs done. Thankfully, I didn't have preeclampsia, but obviously it could turn into that. And that can cause stroke, stuff like that. I don't know everything that it entails, but not good. Not good for me, not good for the baby, brain damage, all that. And so, yeah, it was really scary, especially when I had such an uneventful pregnancy. To hear that, I was like, What? I was pretty scared, actually. Pretty scared at first. And then I was able to trust the Lord with the help of my support team, with my husband and with my family and whatnot, kind of just helping me along with that, kind of relieving different stressors in my life at that moment. So I had hypertension, and so I had to be scheduled for non-stress tests. It's just basically you go in, you sit in a chair, they monitor the baby's movement, they monitor uterine activity, contractions, your heartbeat, baby's heartbeat, and then twice they checked on the ultrasound for your fluid levels, and just to make sure you and your baby are not in any kind of distress. Had the non-stress test. They put me on a medication for hypertension. That helped. It did, even though I'm not a fan of really any medication. But again, I had to just kind of weigh my options and be like, you know what? Their interventions are there for a reason, even though I'm not like gonna run to them for the first option. But if it's needed, then so be it. So anyways, we finally get to meet with our OBGYN. This was kind of like the big appointment, and we knew induction was kind of on the table. It probably will be like talked about, but we didn't know her reaction. So we meet with her, she sits down. I can tell she had something to say, but she was like, how are you, and we kind of asked her how her baby was. And then I don't remember how we got to it, but it was kind of abrupt, like, okay, here's what's going on. And she's like, so I saw all your results and stuff, and we need to induce you. This is serious. And we were like, oh, okay. And I was like, well, I knew induction was on the table, but like, what, we talked about it. We asked questions and whatnot. She's like, yeah, if I'd seen you sooner, you would have already given birth by now. And so we were like, oh, okay. I'm still kind of glad that we didn't see her. He had a little more time to cook and to develop and whatnot. Obviously, if it had to happen at that time, then it had to happen. But it all worked out. And what I'm getting at is the Lord, He orchestrated it all. And so she was like, she's like, of course, you can always back out. Like, you would have to sign, obviously, like a waiver saying that we strongly advised. At this point of time, I forgot to mention that I was already 38 weeks pregnant. So I was 38 weeks pregnant. I was gonna turn 39 weeks that coming Friday. So this was a Tuesday. And so it was so strange because I was emotional, but I had such a peace about it. It was like kind of shocking. A little bit. Now, like I said, we knew that they would probably want to induce us. I was thinking they would want to induce us because he was a little bigger than, he was kind of ahead of the game. He was already measuring at that time, I think, or before then, like 7 pounds. And so, but anyways, so yeah, that was strongly advised. She's like, you can back out. But I this can be really serious. And so after praying and talking about it with ourselves and with godly counselors, we decided to call labor and delivery and schedule our induction. She was wanting us to be induced like that day, but they didn't have an opening that day. Thankfully, it was the next day. So it was a Tuesday, then we were scheduled the next day on a Wednesday to go in at 5 to be induced. And I was really nervous. But again, I was nervous, but I had a peace. So Wednesday rolls around. We were able to have, one last night of sleep, one last night of just spending time together, my husband and I. I definitely, made sure I was not bouncing on the ball, but doing, exercises on my birth ball, drinking a lot of raspberry leaf tea, and date shakes and all of that before I went in. I didn't know if any of those helped. It probably did. I don't know. Thankfully, we had enough time to pack any extra stuff because with inductions, it could take a while. And they wanted to take their time with it because obviously you don't want to just start someone off with Pitocin, which I was really grateful that their plan wasn't to start me on Pitocin right away. Praise the Lord. I forgot to mention that she did check me. She did a cervical check, and I was 0. I was a 0. 0 dilated, 0 centimeters dilated. And I think, I don't remember how effaced I was. I'm pretty sure I was like 50% effaced or something. And then he was at a, so when she had checked me, he was at a negative or positive 3. I don't remember which one's like above the pelvis. So he was like just above the pelvis. But he wasn't like, fully engaged, but he was there. So thankfully, there was that. Wednesday rolls around. I'm super emotional at this point, and I didn't know really how to feel. I was excited to meet my son, but at the same time, I had no idea what to expect, like exactly. You hear all kinds of stories about induction, good, bad, mid, and so you have no idea what to expect, especially like nowadays, because induction back then is so different than now. Thankfully. But anyways, we check in, and I get dressed in my hospital gown, and I just sit there in the hospital bed, and I just broke down crying. I was like, this is happening. This is okay. I kind of felt a little depressed, to be honest, because the room was like very gray and dull. And I know that doesn't really matter, but it does, also because the last time I was in a hospital, like for a long time, was when my grandpa passed. And so I'm just like, I don't want to be here, But thankfully, this was one pro to being induced and being at the hospital for, a good chunk of time. You get used to your room, and you get used to everything, and you get familiar with it. And that's what I needed. I was able to get comfortable being in the hospital. I'm not normally, I don't like hospitals. I don't know who does, really. When I was there longer, it helped a lot. So there was that. And then the nurse that welcomed me, she was just ending her shift, and they were going to do a swap with nurses. And I wanted my IV to be in my forearm, because I heard that that's a good place. And especially when you plan to move around, you don't want to have something on your fist. It's just uncomfortable. So she tried to poke me in the forearm. That did not work. She couldn't find the vein. Okay. Then she tried putting it on my other arm, right here on the side of the wrist. That really hurt, and she couldn't get it. So I was like, okay, take it out. Just put it in my hand. Just put it in the front of my hand. And she did. So it all worked out. It was fine. I had that. It's just funny because the worst part of my labor that I remember is the IV, the story of the IV. So that was the beginning, okay? There's more to the IV, and we'll get to that. And so there was that. That was a great start. Not. So they did their nurse swapping. So we got our night nurse and got settled in. They started me on Cytotec, which is just like a powdery pill that you chew in your mouth and then swallow. Tasted like paper. And what it does is it helps soften the cervix. And so that's what I needed. Obviously, I needed to be softened because I was completely closed. I don't remember the exact dosage and how many. I think it was 6 or 8 pills that I would take. So the plan of action was I would take the Cytotec, and that had to be taken every 2 hours, I think. Every 4 hours. I think it was every 4 hours I would have to take it, depending on how baby was reacting and how much I was contracting. If I was contracting too much, they would have to wait longer. And so apparently I was contracting. I didn't feel any of it. And, but with the monitors, they had to space them out a little longer. And so the plan of action was Cytotec, and then they would probably do the Folly balloon, where they would put a balloon up and, fill it up with saline inside of you to help dilate your cervix. And then the step after that would be the Pitocin. So I started on the Cytotec. They had to, wait a little longer between each one because I was contracting too frequently. By that evening, it was like 2 a.m. in the morning. The nurse checked me at like 2 a.m. and I think at that time I was still closed. I was kind of sad about that. But I had to remind myself that dilation doesn't really mean a whole lot. I mean, obviously you want to be dilated, but that's not like the end all be all when it comes to birth and how fast things are going to go. And so I had to just sit there and be like, Lord, I trust you, and I just need to rest in you. You know, I just had to verbally say, Lord, I trust you. And that really helped. And because that's all I could do. The next morning, change of nurses again. So I did request intermittent fetal monitoring. They had to monitor me when I took the next pill for an hour. And so after that hour, I was able to bounce on my ball. Even during monitoring, I was able to bounce my ball. So during that day, I made sure to take laps, not running, but I would walk around the labor ward, whatever you would call it. So I would walk around, do laps throughout the day. I would not bounce on my ball. I would do like hip circles and figure eights and pelvic tilts on my birth ball. I would stand up and sway. I tried to just be upright and moving. And this is key because it really, really helped him descend, I believe. And even like all of the preparation I had done during pregnancy, I think really helped. So Thursday morning, I was 1 centimeter dilated. By 3 p.m., I was 2.5 centimeters dilated. And thankfully, I was able to eat and drink water during the whole of Thursday. When it came to the evening, we were getting ready for bed. Obviously, we were like, okay, I was thinking it was going to be another night. Honestly, I was thinking I was going to give birth Saturday or something. You know, I I had very low expectations. I knew that it could happen, you know, but I was like, Lord, I don't want to have any like high expectations and be disappointed. Like, okay, leaving my hands open on that. It could happen anytime, but it can happen anytime. So, I'm not on my schedule at all. And so I just had to be fully surrendered to whatever plan God had, whatever timeline he had. So around 9 o'clock, I felt like a gush, just a little bit. I was like, okay, I hope I'm not peeing myself. And so I was like, okay, I need to use the restroom. I thought I just lost my mucus plug. It probably was both my water and my mucus plug. But it didn't really seem like my water had broke because it was only like a little bit. So I used the restroom, some mucusy stuff came out, and then the nurse came in. It was time for my next dose of Cytotec, and then they would have to monitor me. And so I ended up just sitting down on the bed with like a chuck pad under me. And then after the hour, she came back and I got up to use the restroom again. And the whole pad was just like full of like a liquidy. It was kind of a bloody tinged liquid. And she's like, since when was this happening? And we were like, well, like it happened, you know, because we did tell her, you know, I think I lost my mucus plug. The only issue I have with like first time moms, is they don't really take you very seriously. Like, and I mean, I get it. I've never been through this before, but like, I knew what I was, you know, talking about. But anyways, I thought I lost my mucus plug, and I'm pretty sure I was losing some along with the water. And so we told her that. She didn't really say much. She's like, oh, okay. And then she came back, she's like, and she saw the chuck pad with the, you know, the liquid on it. And so she tested it, and it was amniotic fluid. So my water had broke. Obviously not fully, but it was leaking. And so that was like a really good sign. So at 10:30, I started actually, I think before that I was feeling contractions. I was feeling them kind of like period cramps. And then by 10:30-ish, I started breathing through my contractions. They weren't bad, but they were strong enough to where, okay, I knew I needed to start practice breathing through them. And so I would inhale 4 seconds, exhale 6 or 8, and do that 5 times. And that's the length of a contraction. And so I was doing that. I was just like holding up my finger, you know, counting down how many times I had to breathe. What was really cool about it is I felt my stomach harden up at the top and then release. It wasn't anything too noticeable, but it was kind of cool because that's what happens with the uterus. It contracts up and gathers up at the top, and then it pushes down. That's how it helps push the baby down. So that was cool. I really don't remember when it got intense because I was starting to get in my own zone before it got super intense. So to me, I don't remember when things picked up and whatnot. So my water had broke, and then by 12 a.m. they checked me, I was a 3 going on a 4. And at 3:46 a.m. I was 6 centimeters dilated. At 4 a.m., so Friday morning, 4 a.m., I was 8 centimeters dilated. And then at 5:30 I was 9.5 centimeters dilated, and he was born at 5:59. I really don't remember when everything started picking up, but I remember slowly like incorporating different things from my toolbox, like the combs. I had a comb in my hand the whole time, so apparently that worked. I don't remember like how it worked, but I think it worked. I don't know. I think it just helped holding on to something, just something, and so that helped. And I do remember there was a time, because they have to ask, on the scale of 1 to 10, how much pain are you in? That was kind of annoying, honestly, but I would try to rate it. I never knew how to rate it because it's not pain like you stubbed your toe or broke your leg or cut yourself or something. I don't know. It's a different kind of pain. I've heard it put this way. It's a working pain, not a hurting pain. I would agree with that. It was definitely intense, and it was uncomfortable, and it was hard, but it wasn't. When I look back, and this could be just me forgetting about the pain, as a lot of women do, but when I look back, I don't remember it being like excruciating like I would think it would be. Definitely intense, definitely uncomfortable, but I think the worst part of the contractions was like wanting to push but not being able to, and so she would always ask me, and I'd be like, I don't know. But there was a point where I was like, it's there. She's like, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm like, I think I was in the middle of contraction. I was like, it's there. I didn't know how to, like, I don't want to answer you, lady. Like, I'm sorry. Thanks for helping me, but it's there. I don't know. But it was funny because I didn't want to say 10. So it's interesting. So there was that. I don't remember when this was. It didn't seem like too long after everything started picking up that when I was pushing, I would do the breaths. I also started kind of vocalizing in like a low tone. And that really helped actually. When I would breathe, I would do kind of like a low tone, like, ooh. I know that sounds weird, but it really helped. As I was doing that, I remember I was hanging over the bed. So I tried different positions. Yeah, I ended up sticking with just a couple, which was like hilarious. I never even stepped foot in the shower. I was gonna, labor in the shower, let the warm water hit me. Nope, didn't do that. I really didn't want to move around too much. There were certain positions that I felt comfortable with, and that was that. But I was trying, hanging over the bed at the edge of the end of the bed, or the top of the bed where your head goes. I was hanging over, and that's where I remember when I was breathing, my body started bearing down. And I think I was only a 4 at that point. I don't remember when this was, but I started bearing down. So when you bear down, for those who don't know, it's kind of an involuntary push. It sounds like this. Ooh, like that. It's kind of weird. It's kind of a shiver. But just think of it like, okay, this is gross, but throwing up, that's involuntary. Your body just does it, and you can't control it. And so that's what my body was doing. And I think because my water had broken, it was hilarious because they kept having to move the monitor down to check his heartbeat because he was dropping, and he had dropped low in my pelvis. So I think that's why everything started picking up, because he was there. And so the position I loved the most during labor was honestly being on the ball was okay. Leaning over I think was really comfortable for me, but sitting on the edge of the bed and having someone else sit with me across from me and just being able to hug them and lean over them. So that helps. And that, honestly, I was in that position for most of my contractions. But I remember I started bearing down, and they told me like not to. I think they checked me because I was starting to push. They had checked me. I was only a 6, but still. And they were telling us it was going to be another like 4 more hours. But judging by like how I was breathing and like me bearing down, my mom and Josh's mom were like, no, this is happening soon. And this was like kind of the irritating part is obviously my body's doing it, right? I was bearing down. I was pushing, essentially. My body was pushing. I wasn't pushing with each contraction. And they kept telling me to stop. And I was like, I can't, And so I remember that's when I kind of lost my breath work. I was breathing. I was inhaling and breathing, but I wasn't counting down. I was definitely vocalizing still. But that's when I remember I stopped doing that when they told me to stop. But my breath work would change when I felt the need to push. I would try to be like that to like stop myself. It didn't happen. Like I was still bearing down. And so that's the only irritating part is I wish more people would be like familiar with the physiological side of birth and knowing that, no, you're not going to push your baby out. At least I don't think there's a circumstance where that happens. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But my body was doing what it needed for labor to progress. But what's remarkable about it is it still worked out, and my body was still going to do what it needed to do. So 346, 6 centimeters dilated. By 4 a.m., I was 8 centimeters dilated. And then by 5:30, I was 9.5 centimeters dilated. So I was right there. Here's the whole IV situation. I don't remember when it fell out, but it did fall out during labor. That was irritating because they had to repoke me. So it fell out, got yanked out when I was changing positions. And so they had to repoke me on this arm. The problem with this hand is it was positional. So they couldn't it wasn't perfect. If I was in a certain position, they wouldn't be able to put anything in me. And so that was irritating. At 9.5 centimeters dilated, when they should have been calling the doctor, they were trying to redo my IV. And so they brought in the vein finder. I was trying to just concentrate during each contraction. That was really the only irritating part. One of the only irritating parts was the stinking IV. But anyways, finally they were like, okay, so we're gonna put up the squat bar because I had requested that. It's so funny because I requested to try out the peanut ball. I put my leg up and tried it in a contraction. I was like, nope, I'm not doing this. So it was just funny, different positions I just pictured myself in my head liking. Nope, didn't at all. So 5:30, they finally gave up on finding my vein, on putting in a new IV. So they just stuck with but they did prick me a couple times. But they ended up just leaving the port in that I had originally, or not originally, but the second time. So they brought in the squat bar, they put it in, and I got up, and with the next contraction, I did a practice push. And when I did a practice push, they saw his head crowning and they're like, okay, we need to grab the doctor. And I knew, at that point, I was like, I knew the baby was there. When I was even before that, when I was bearing down, when they told me, not to push, okay, I felt his head, down there. And I knew it wasn't time, but it was helping stretch everything out. And so they saw his head and they called the doctor in and the whole team of people. And what a relief that, it felt very daunting. Okay, here's the moment, we all been waiting for, let's push this baby out. But at the same time, it was so relieving because that was the only reason why I wanted them to check me throughout labor, how dilated I was, because I just wanted them to give me the go ahead to push the baby out. I was like, I need to push the baby out. I knew he was right there, and I knew like he was coming soon. So anyways, the doctors, everyone rushes in. They ended up taking the squat bar away. I was in my zone during the contractions, and so the doctor comes in, all the team of people come in, they set up their stuff. So I did end up, I wasn't pushing on my back, but they did end up bringing the bed up, and so I was sitting up while I was holding my legs back. I don't know. I think that position worked for what I needed in that moment, but I would like in future births to try other positions out. But for that time being, that's what worked. Now, the one thing I do regret was how I pushed. So I had practiced, breathing my baby down, but they were like coaching me during my pushing. So the next contraction, they said, okay, you need to bear down and push. And so I did. Now, the thing I regret is they told me, and I knew this, they told me to hold my breath and to push down. And so I, like, when I was pushing, I did that for a little bit, and then I would, try to, breathe him down. And they kept, telling me, no, hold your breath, breathe down. And so with the next contraction, honestly, I was so desperate for him to come out. I just did it. I held my breath, and I just pushed as hard as I could. And within 7 minutes, he came out. It didn't even take 2 contractions fully. So within 7 minutes, he came out. I didn't expect it to be that fast. The reason why I regret pushing like that was because I did tear pretty bad. And so I just wish that I had better support as far as that goes. But again, in the moment, it's just so intense, and you're like, get this baby out. And so honestly, it's a regret, but it's also I can't see it any other way. And so it's a regret, I want to do it better next time, but it's not something I'm depressed about. And so he came out within 7 minutes. And that's one thing though. If you're afraid of tearing, if you're afraid of all of that, don't be. Honestly, at least for me, I didn't have an epidural. So and this should be a little comforting to you as well, even if you get an epidural. I felt it's stretching down there, but I didn't feel any tears. I didn't feel it happening. When you don't get an epidural, and especially if, thankfully I didn't have to get on Pitocin, because I don't know what, how labor feels with that. But being without an epidural, you have all of these natural hormones that go on in your body. And so I was, especially at that point, it was all adrenaline. And so I couldn't feel I knew it was stretching. I felt it stretch. But that was it. And and my baby was there. And I guess I was I would open my eyes, but I would close my eyes for the most part. And so they kept, telling me, Haley, look down. And so I opened my eyes, and they were holding Jude in front of me, and he was just crying, and I was like, that just happened. So I was kind of in shock. I was like, whoa, this happened. And so they put him on me. He was crying. Everyone else in the room but me was crying. I was just like, whoa, I was running off of adrenaline, pure adrenaline. What a rush birth is. He was crying. I was trying to soothe him and stuff, but the baby doctor heard there was something in his lungs, and he had sucked up amniotic fluid coming out. And so they had to bring him to the table next to me and call in a team of people, and they had to suck all of that fluid out. So that was kind of sad. We didn't get to do skin to skin right away, which that was a bummer too. But it all ended up being fine. It was okay. I was right there next to my baby, and I was still running off of adrenaline. So thankfully, when the doctor had to stitch me up, first of all, they numb that whole area. So when they're stitching you up, you don't, it's fine. You don't feel any pain. The most painful part is the injection, and it's not that bad. At least for me and for my story. Not everyone's the same, I guess. But, so it wasn't that bad. He stitched me up. It took a while, but thankfully the tear wasn't all the way, in every part of my lady parts down there. It was just inside. And so even though, yes, it's pretty bad, I didn't have to worry about a lot of stinging when I peed afterwards, or even, when I had my first bowel movement. So that was a good thing if you're scared about that, as I was very scared about that. It wasn't that bad. It was not that bad. And so there was that. And then they had to give me the fundal massage. Thankfully, by that time, the baby was with me. I was doing skin to skin with him, and he had to do the fundal massage, which it's not a massage. I've heard it's supposed to hurt, but when he was doing it, I think I was just running off of a lot of adrenaline, so nothing was like very painful, and so the doctor was very surprised. So that happened. He stitched me up. We waited for the placenta to come out, and they did have to give me Pitocin at the end because I was bleeding a lot. Not like enough to where they had to like rush me somewhere else or like give me an infusion or anything, but it was quite a bit of blood. But overall, the baby and I were healthy, and I was able to be skin to skin with him. He had a major cone head, and when he came out a little swollen too and bruised, just because he was so low in the pelvis during labor. But he was fine, and it went down, and it was okay. Just for those mothers expecting, your baby might look like an alien coming out, but that's okay. He'll get better, and he's still so precious. So anyways, yeah, it was a rush. It was such a rush. And then afterwards, they have, within an hour, I think, they make you go pee, because they want, obviously, things to be cleaned down there, but also they want your bladder to be emptied so your uterus has, room to contract down. Something along those lines, I don't know. At that point, I was kind of getting uncomfortable sitting. So I was like, okay, I need to let's go pee, let's get this over with. Because honestly, that was the part I wasn't looking forward to. It's so funny. I gave birth to a baby, and then I'm kind of being a wiener about going pee. Because I was afraid it would sting. I don't know. And so I have my mom get me up to go to the restroom. And apparently the nurse wanted us to wait for him to walk me to the bathroom. But I told my mom, I was like, and we didn't know that, but I was like, okay, I need to use the restroom. Let's go. And so she walked me to the restroom across from the bed. And I was just sitting there. I think everything just hit me in that moment. The exhaustion from not sleeping throughout the night hit me. The loss of blood hit me. And looking at, the blood that was still coming out, and just like the fear of peeing and it stinging, like it all hit me, and I ended up passing out. Apparently I was just on my mom like that. Freaked her out, obviously. And so she called people to come in, and apparently it took a while. It took a good, minute to bring me back. I don't know, a minute, but I was dreaming and all of that, like during this time. Like I felt like I fell into a deep sleep. Like that's how it felt like. And so they woke me up. I just couldn't go pee. I could not. And so they had to put the dreaded catheter in me. It wasn't that bad. I was dreading it. I was so scared. Again, I gave birth to a baby unmedicated, and I was scared to pee. I'm so funny. But anyways, they had to lay me on the bed, put the catheter in to drain my bladder, which was pretty full, actually. And so, it stung a little bit, but it was fine. And I remember just feeling so tired. Like, I was so tired. But then, like, I couldn't sleep because of the adrenaline, I think. They brought me a breakfast burrito, and I ate that. So, yeah, after that, they moved me to our recovery room. So that's our birth story. I wanted to share to any expected mamas or any girl out there that's, curious about birth, that wants children one day or is expecting children, or you're just curious, you already have children and you like to listen to birth stories. I did want to share a few things that helped me during birth. My labor without an epidural. These aren't really in order, but like number one, staying in an upright position. So before labor got intense, being able to walk around, having movement, movement brings improvement. And bouncing on the ball, not bouncing. I always say bouncing. You don't bounce on the ball. Doing hip circles on the ball, just staying upright, even if it's just sitting in bed upright, sitting on the edge of the bed, walking around, swaying, whatever. So staying upright, and then especially during labor, staying upright was a huge thing for me. Helped progress the labor, and honestly, it was comfortable. It was more comfortable than laying down for sure. My birth ball. So the second was my birth ball. I'm so glad I brought that. I don't think they had a birth ball, so I'm so glad I brought it. So I was on that for a while. And then hanging on to a support person, that really helped. Just sitting on the edge of the bed, like I said, that was my favorite position. That's when I got through transition, actually. I was hugging my mother-in-law. And so because that was one thing about labor was it was really intense for especially my husband and my mother who were there. And they were amazing in helping me during labor. But there did come a point where I think it was just like they needed breaks in between because it was very intense. It's hard to see your daughter in pain like that. It's hard to see your wife in pain. And you don't even know what she's going through or what she's feeling, but you just see her uncomfortable, and so it's emotional. So I remember my mother-in-law stood in, and she was able to be there, which was great. It was great having 3 people to just help swap out during labor. And so hanging on to a support person, walking around the hospital or labor and delivery ward was very helpful. Staying positive was very helpful. Staying calm, breathing through contractions, even early ones. When your contractions begin, like, you need to start breathing through them because it just helps you get into that rhythm, breathing through the contractions, so that your body's you're already used to breathing through them when they get intense. So breathing through, vocalizing through contractions in low tones was very helpful. I've even seen videos of women singing during labor, and that's very interesting. So if you have a playlist that you want to sing to, I thought I would sing, honestly, but I didn't even think about it at the time. And so that it helps. And so doing that and then closing my eyes, that seemed to help me. Listening to my body, that's a big one. I did use my just regular plastic combs. And then I did create a labor playlist. Now, during labor, I don't remember hearing anything. I knew it was playing. Like, every now and then I would kind of zone it back into reality, and I would hear a song, and then I would zone back out. But it definitely helped prepare me for labor, a playlist. So that was helpful. A lot of water. I didn't really eat during active labor. I didn't want to. I also thought I would be very hot during labor. I wasn't even cold. I wasn't cold or hot. So that was kind of strange. But the fan I did bring, it's like a stroller fan. That helped. I don't know how it helped, but it helped. So, and then some aromatherapy. I brought my peppermint, and the only ones I remember using was my peppermint and this like bergamot, like sweet orange bergamot scent. That was helpful. They did try to do counter pressure. That was helpful. Not every single time, but it was helpful most of the times. And yeah, those are things that helped me. And honestly, I just want to let you know that it's nothing to be afraid of. Obviously, my story is not your story. My story is not the girl next door's story. So every story is different. Everyone experiences things differently. But I just want to let you know that don't be afraid. When I was a kid, I was terrified of birth. That's my story. Like, I didn't want kids for that reason. Like, I was terrified of pain and agony and how movies portray birth. And so even though maybe that's the case for some people, but like, I mean, when you're really listening to your body and you're really just like fully surrendered, I don't know, like birth is a beautiful thing. It's a very hard and very intense thing. And it can be painful. It can be very painful for some people, but it's nothing to be afraid of. And it's a different kind of pain. And so that's my story. I don't want to make light of anyone else's stories that were very intense. Were like more intense than mine, were more painful. When you have fear, fear, I mean, the Bible says that fear brings torment. Like, it's torment to be fearful. And so that's like a verse I really clung to, actually. And it really helped, because when you're going into labor fearful, it's going to be painful because you're tense. And so in order for it to be easier on you, you have to relax, you have to rest, you have to trust the Lord, and not be fearful, but be made perfect in love. Another thing that helped was scripture memorization, even though it's funny because in my labor, I was just in my own mind. Like, I was praying, but I don't remember like quoting the scriptures, but it really, really helped me get there. Like, it helped me before labor, prepare for labor, memorizing scriptures, having scriptures hung up, which I created different cards, scriptures, affirmations, I call them like truth cards, hung up throughout the hospital room. That helped. I didn't pay attention to it during labor, but before labor is how it helped. It helped prepare my mind for labor. So that really helped. But anyways, support team, a great support team. My husband was there, my mom was there, and my mother-in-law was there. And so they were great. They stood by me and helped me and advocated for me, and it was just great to have people there. Even before then, just to hang out and eat snacks and watch shows and stuff to get your mind off of things. So anyways, that's our birth story. I hope you enjoyed it. I really hope it's not too long, because I don't even know if it ends at all, but I still have scatterbrain, mom brain, whatever. Like, I can't really, especially when it comes to labor, like, I don't remember a whole lot because I was in my zone. I was in my own labor land. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed. The key takeaway is do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. Things that you are fearful of, it's not that bad. It's really not. And I was super afraid, especially going into induction, because the rate is higher for a C-section. And so I had to, in the hospital, when I was walking around, every time we would pass, there were like 2 double doors where they would bring the women in for like surgery and stuff for a C-section. And so every time I would pass that, I had to give it to God. I had to, because that was a fear of mine, was going into a C-section. But I was like, Lord, if that's your plan for me, then that's your plan for me. That's your plan for Jude. That's, our story. And so I had to just really surrender. And that's not comfortable, because when you surrender, you are giving up the rights, you're giving up the reins to the Lord. And he can either, obviously bring you out of that situation or bring you through that situation. But regardless, he was very present in that room and a comfort and a help. He gave me so much strength. And birth is remarkable. It's amazing. His design for us, the human body, is amazing. So I just wanted to share that with you all, and I hope you have a beautiful day. Baby juices, bye. And you get a baby at the end of it, so it's all worth it. I never know how to close these things out, so bye.